Hey everyone, we are back with another update, and by we, of course, I mean with me as always is Corey. Say hi, Corey.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
And so, obviously, the first big update, as you can see on the screen, we just passed 90,000 euros on the Kickstarter not too long ago, and we are trending toward the 100,000 euro stretch goal. So, we wanted to actually update everyone and let you guys know what's on that stretch goal. So anyway, survival mode, gameplay added to all versions. So that's your typical infinite enemy swarms that you have to see how long you could survive through and how many points and how many kills you can rack up before you get killed. And then 3 additional trading cards with different characters from the game in all of the physical boxed versions, and then reversible covers for all of the Neo Geo boxed versions. And another thing, we just got confirmation recently from Pixel Heart that also in the MVS Neo Geo boxed versions, you're also going to get the arcade cabinet inserts. In other news, as part of the whole kind of marketing campaign for this Kickstarter, we sent out a playable demo to several YouTubers. And we got some great feedback from one of the YouTubers that actually ties into something that we've talked about on many of our videos, and that's that whole idea that you have to be really careful when you're making a game and you're constantly playtesting it and you designed everything, you know exactly how someone is supposed to play, that you become the worst possible judge of how difficult or frustrating or obvious elements of the gameplay can be. So long story short, we actually made an updated version of the demo that addressed all of his great feedback, and I'm going to play that now and kind of walk through the changes and just explain the kind of gameplay design philosophy behind DaemonClaw. Alright, so let's dive in. We'll skip the story part. Even though very, very nice graphics as always, Corey.
Thank you.
So the first thing we did, if any of you have seen the gameplay before, right off the bat originally, there were the air-based falcons that would start swooping at you. So that was the first big thing of adjusting the game. The difficulty curve was to just ease you in a little smoother and give you a chance. Like, that's one of the first things a new player is going to do, is stay still on the screen and figure out their moves. But if you did that before, you stay still on the screen and suddenly you got falcons flying at you from left and right.
Yeah. We kind of had that light bulb realization that the sword-wielding birdmen were a little bit easier to take on right off the bat than the flying falcons.
Yep. So, and then we made a lot of nice subtle tweaks that make a big difference. The punch animation plays faster, and especially the recovery from it, or the follow-through. So it's a lot easier to punch one way and turn and punch the other, since in this game, obviously that's a lot of what it's all about, is quickly reacting to enemies coming from multiple sides. And, yep.
I think part of my input when we were going through this was thinking, like making all of the default moves, like default jump and all these things, more useful. And your idea about the normal punch makes it feel a lot better. I mean, it feels more like most games would have, and it gives you that opportunity. He feels far less sluggish overall.
Exactly. And then, so you could see, Corey mentioned the jump. Before, the regular jump was really low to the ground to kind of encourage players to learn how and to use the high jump. But it just made, especially for beginning players, it made the low jump just kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
And this,
you couldn't quite clear a ground-based enemy, which was a problem. Yeah,
exactly. Which you could see now I can do that, which also makes the drop kick more gratifying from the regular low jump. And then there, that was nice. But yeah, so as now we're getting to the falcon enemies. And so it gave the player more time to to learn their basic moves. The other really important thing, which I think was another of Corey's suggestions, make sure you can actually duck. They have falcons, so there we go. I can actually, if I duck, they'll not quite hit me.
Yeah. Because while the rolling is a very handy way of also getting out of their way, it's also a little bit risky and fast because you're moving forward, and it feels like a more advanced move for going into an attack or something. So I liked the idea that at least on level 1, or at least earlier in the game, you can just duck and get out of the way. Because otherwise, I found myself normally playing without hardly ever needing to just duck by itself.
Right, exactly.
And so,
And I think that is an instinctual people to do if something's swooping down at them, is to duck instead of actually roll. So that was a great suggestion, Corey. And then the other little things that I did were simply making you stay invulnerable for a tiny bit longer. I'm gonna stun him so he gets hit by his own weapon there. So going back to that topic of sort of the gameplay philosophy, one important thing is that DaemonClaw, while we love Metroidvanias and we love platformers, DaemonClaw is neither. And it's all about the fast, visceral gameplay, action, and fun. So I'm not going to go into the boss fight. We're going to let the other YouTubers kind of show that more if and when they make videos playing the demo. So I'm going to quit out and then skip to level 2. So basically there was a game that I grew up playing a million years ago for the 8-bit Sega Master System, which not too many Americans grew up with, just called Black Belt. And it had a nice, simple, arcadey principle sort of to the gameplay. It's just fast action, always adapting to enemies coming at you from all sides. And obviously, clearing levels and getting to boss fights and all that stuff. But decidedly not a platformer with careful platform jumping in holes, and not a Metroidvania where you're going to backtrack or try to earn, more health, potions or whatever, anything like that. It's just your character gets stronger when you develop more skill, basically.
Right, yeah.
Other than the stuff you can earn within a level, like within the arcade gameplay, like, a power-up for your magic gauntlet in the case of DaemonClaw, or in the case of Black Belt, a thing that makes you momentarily invulnerable. But anyway,
and talking about Black Belt, I mean, it was a very fast-paced game. Your reaction time had to be probably a little quicker than DaemonClaw, at least the way it is right now.
Exactly.
But this actually lends to the idea of why we came up with the idea of survival mode and adding it to this next stretch goal. We actually thought of that fairly recently during the campaign because I was thinking about that. I was like, we need those moments where you're just having to one hit a bunch of guys at once or a bunch of things coming at you. And, there's plenty of room throughout the rest of the game. And even in these first 2 levels to, we're going to obviously balance everything out so that it doesn't get too difficult too fast. But, so we always thought that something like Black Belt and the other games that were similar to it, but maybe not as good, should have evolved into their own fully fledged genre instead of just being platformers or Metroidvanias. And this is kind of our vision of where it could have gone, if that had been done back in the day. But of course, we can do it now. So.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the cool thing, is to take these things from games, not just Black Belt. We definitely added some influences from Altered Beast and Golden Axe to this game too. To just really think, where could this have gone, and what were the good ideas that we could take even further. And like Corey was saying about the speed, that's something that would be also great. There are going to be difficulty settings for DaemonClaw, so once you get really good, you could switch it to a hard or a hardcore mode, and then you would have that really hectic non-stop action where you're constantly flying around the screen, like, slamming enemies into each other and all that fun stuff. So let's get to the end of level 2. Again, there is in this demo the intro to the level 2 boss, but we're not going to show that either. But yeah, that's the general idea, just pure arcade fun action, and the value. So like that's kind of the thing that became the trap in the game industry in general, is that everyone became convinced, and it was even in the marketing, that the value of a game was based entirely on how many hours it takes you to beat the game from beginning to end.
Right.
And that kind of lost sight of the whole idea of fun factor and replayability. So, like, that's one of the really big things. And that was maybe one of the biggest potential risks of trying to market DaemonClaw for a Kickstarter and otherwise, is going against that general idea that has kind of been the main way of thinking in the game industry for over a decade now, is this idea that if it doesn't take hundreds of hours to beat the game, then it's not enough value to, you know what I mean? And like, my point is, while I love Metroidvanias, and in fact we plan on making some that take place in the same world someday, that's a very different kind of gameplay and a very different kind of satisfaction from playing. But
exactly. I played plenty of games that are the longer format games and stuff, and have done that with platformers in the past. But I think the idea that you were talking about of that visceral action and that sort of nonstop making sure that your focus is on the foes you're facing most of the time. We didn't want to lose sight of that by trying to build out like large maps or something that you got to go explore and all this stuff. Because from a game design standpoint, and we've been on the other side of this for a long time, making games, and I found when you design things like maps and you're more of a map designer, you have to be very careful not to make compromises with the way you're making your enemies and your enemy behaviors and things like that. So some of those experiences can suffer if you're not careful, because you just want to make a cool map or something. And I love making like complicated maps, but we didn't want that for this game. This game is specifically focused.
Exactly. That would go against the overall philosophy of focusing as much of the development time on refining the fun factor. So no matter how good you are and how careful you are, if you don't have infinite time or infinite budget, then you can't make, like, for every new level you add, that means you've had less time to refine the other levels that are there to make sure it's nonstop fun. And like, that can be one of the trade-offs with a Metroidvania, is suddenly tends to not be, for very long stretches of gameplay, there's not any cool wow moments for gameplay or for the player to feel like, wow, I really pulled off an awesome sequence of moves there. It's more of a zen kind of going through the motions, backtracking on the map, re-killing the same enemies to earn your experience points, which all of that can be fun in a more zen way. But this game is all about the visceral adrenaline arcade action and being able to focus on that. So the value we're trying to offer with DaemonClaw is you can beat the game in one sitting and have fun the whole way through, and it should never feel monotonous or boring or like you're not doing anything important. There should be nonstop chances to be doing cool combinations and making fun, cool decisions on how you're going to deal with the particular situation. And it should be so fun that even though you beat it that day, maybe a half hour or an hour or later, you might want to actually play it again. That, to us, that's the value that we're trying to make sure we bring to the table with DaemonClaw.
Yeah, when I go back and play classic games that were made 20, 30 years ago, those are the ones I tend to gravitate towards. That you can replay them anytime, and it's just as fun as it was the first time.
Yep, exactly. And then the other really important aspect to that whole idea of adding replayability, as hopefully you guys all know by now, in this particular Kickstarter, there's going to be the Mega Drive version of DaemonClaw, Neo Geo, and Modern System version, which you're seeing right now. And not only are all of them going to play somewhat different regardless and look a little different and sound a little different, but the big thing is there's going to be a second selectable character you can play as that's exclusive to each system. And so, and that second playable character is going to play very differently from this main, default character, Elric. So that is also, so you might beat it once one day, with the Elric, and then later on go, you know what, I want to play the Neo Geo version as this other character, or the Mega Drive version as this other character. And to remind everyone of how the Kickstarter works, if you buy any of the versions, you're going to get the Steam version, which will let you play all three versions on your PC. So if you buy the boxed cartridged Mega Drive version or the Neo Geo versions, you'll also get a Steam key for the Steam version, which will let you play the other versions. So, earlier in the day, you might play the Mega Drive version, and then later on you might go, oh, now I want to play as this character on this other version. So that's one of the big ways we're going to just really increase that replayability and bring that value.
Yeah, and like I was talking about the potential survival mode at the next stretch goal, but then there's the boss rush mode as well. Both of those were thought of in that same way. Something you could keep playing over and over and keep getting better at and things like that. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and that brings me to the scoring system. So, I've been chatting and not really paying attention, but because I've played so much, this game is, these first two levels are definitely not a challenge for me. I would definitely want to put it up to a harder difficulty setting once that exists. But you could see down in the lower left, there's scores. And if I do something special like air bash this guy down into that guy, you'll see it says air bash, and it gave me bonus points. And then there was one called friendly fire. If you make enemies hurt themselves with their own weapons by, stunning them so they can't catch it or bouncing a grenade back at them, you get those bonus points. So there's actually lots of different ways. Let me actually go back to level 1 and show the kind of quintessential example of what we're going with. It's deceptively simple arcade action that has a lot of nuance that the player gets to discover as they play. So in level 1, for instance, we'll get to the birdmen that actually throw their boomerang shaped scimitars that actually go back to them, and there's several different ways to deal with those boomerangs. So I'll be getting to them very shortly.
Yeah, and I would say just like a lot of things, potentially subject to change with gameplay or balancing. Like the actual values of those scores may not be
exactly
what we end up with, at the end of the day. Well, we'll make sure that that's very satisfying to rack up a high score.
Exactly.
By the time it's said and done.
Yeah, that's the trick in game development. Step 1 is get it to function, and then you keep refining it.
Yeah.
So obviously you can jump over it. You can also roll under it. And I could have chained into an uppercut, which is probably the most basic or common mid-level skill that a player might develop. But another thing you can do, a well-timed punch, once you have the gauntlet, you can actually just destroy it with your gauntlet. And then there's one other cool thing you could do, which I'm about to show you. Oh yeah, there's actually two things. So you could land on it like Mario with your metal boots and destroy it, but I won't show you that one here. Because I want to show you what you can do. There's too many enemies. Hold on. It's because I'm staying in one spot.
Yeah, they creeped up behind you.
So there you go. You saw, if you were paying attention, there was a lot going on. But I jumped over it, and then I drop-kicked the Birdman to stun him, so he was in a state of stunnedness and could not catch his own boomerang blade. So it stuck him right in the chest and killed him. So, and what should have happened, unless there's a bug, if you were looking down at the score, I should have gotten a friendly fire bonus score. So anyway, yeah, I think that's pretty much a good spot to end this video. Of course, thanks everyone who has supported the Kickstarter or is considering doing so. Yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll be back with another update pretty soon.
If you enjoy our content and want to keep up to date on our games, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, if you want to support our projects, consider becoming a patron. The link's in the description, and we'll see you soon.